It's opening night. It's a full house. The actors are waiting in the wings, ready to hit the stage. Will the show go off without a hitch? Of course it will, because our special guest, Chris Knutson, is behind the scenes, and he knows all about stage production. Break a leg with your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
All right, welcome back to Music Student 101. Hey, Matt, what's up, buddy?
Jeremy, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Still reeling from that 50th episode.
That was a big one.
I know, man.
That was a big one.
We have something very special to talk about today. Back in episode 11, many moons ago, we did an episode on music career possibilities. And we covered just about everything from music therapy to stage work
to gigging, to teaching, to all sorts of stuff.
And that was kind of an overview of the career possibilities. And this one is actually going to dig deep into one of those genres here.
Absolutely.
So we know that there's some of you out there who are technically minded and want to maybe do something with music technology. And we haven't really covered a lot of that in this podcast. So today our special treat will be one who is well versed in the subject and in that of stage and theater and film production, our friend Chris Knutson.
Yay.
Welcome,
Say hello,
Chris.
All right, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Chris also, we met at UAB back around the same time, the university Matt and I graduated from.
Right.
And Chris graduated from.
Yep.
And you went through the whole, what was your degree again?
I guess the program was a music degree, and the concentration was in technology.
Okay.
Instead of an instrument. So it's essentially a music major, but the focus was on technology and recording instead of actually being a specialist in a musical instrument, if you will. So.
But as part of the music degree, you still had to pass the piano proficiency exam and
essentially take all the theory classes and all the history classes.
Essentially become a musician if you weren't a musician beforehand, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the UAB concert choir.
Yeah, okay.
And did some piano lessons while I was there, and learned to read music and all that kind of standard stuff, if you will. Had to do some transpositions and
we talked about that.
Little sight reading proficiency.
Yeah.
It was a pretty well-rounded kind of basic music education, if you will, but then we kind of branched into the recording technology and computer music as well as part of the major.
So that was the same path me and you took, right?
It
music
is.
Technology.
Yeah. We had to. I remember going to a local recording studio and learning how to mix and things like that. Yeah.
So
Good
Matt,
times.
You went off into academia.
That I did.
I kind of went off in the film and television world, and recently I found you on a set or two in the film and television world, Chris.
Yep.
But for just to get us started, kind of tell us where you are right now. What is your career? What are you doing these days?
I've been kind of a union stagehand with IATSE, the local here in Birmingham is 78, and I've been with doing that pretty much since I got out of college. I went to work with the Alabama Symphony as a stagehand, and doing summer gigs with them. We had a audio company that would come help out, and that's how I got into audio. And eventually they were like, "Hey, you actually know what a symphony is supposed to sound like? Why don't you mix?"
That's a skill, knowing how to mix a symphony.
And that's how I got started with the audio company. And then, as things kind of progressed, I actually ended up using a company from Nashville and having, people come down and do all that. So I'm more of just a stagehand for the symphony now. But, once I kind of learned audio and learned how to hook up different PAs and, learn my way around a mixing console, I was able to branch out and freelance on my own as a audio guy, audio engineer, if you will. And I do a lot of like corporate shows with that, and they're not the most like interesting a lot of times, but they are usually pretty good paydays.
Yeah.
So what are some interesting shows that you've worked then? Some favorites?
A lot of the shows I do here locally are the Broadway ones.
Oh yeah.
And they'll, come through and they mostly have their, traveling crew that does all the key positions, if you will. But yeah, we'll, help them set up and help them, do whatever they need to get going. And I think Lion King was one of the big ones recently.
Wow, yeah.
And that was cool. I was the house sound guy for the Civic Center concert hall. And so essentially my duties were to, distribute mics after they batteried them up and test them and kind of make sure the feed was on in the lobby and down in the dressing rooms and, kind of sit back and watch the show.
So they
60 times.
they changed it. You had someone changing batteries and testing them for you? Why you just stand there like a rock star?
No, I mean, you would, their A2 pretty much changed all the batteries and then, they had a rotating cast and they have a big ensemble. So with the type of mics they use, they would maybe change out a cap or something for a different performer. I don't remember if they're using DPAs or Countrymen's or what, but they would, they all have notes on like, oh, if this guy's going in, he needs a +3, or if this guy's coming in, or girl's coming in, she needs a -3. So, their A2 would take care of that, put batteries in, and then I would take them to the front of house guy, and he would check everything.
Wow.
Is this
And then I'd hang them up in the dressing room. Yeah.
Is this based on the range of the speaking voice plus and the dynamics of the actor, or?
Yeah, just their vocal quality, and however they wanted them to sound, because there was a lot of characters in that.
Right, and these are lavalier mics that you put on their body. Do you hide them? Are you trying to hide them? I mean, they're on stage and they're far away.
Usually, the wardrobe department kind of will help with that. And a lot of them, I think with Simba and Nala and some of the characters that had the big headpieces on, there'd actually be like a mic built in to it. So like one of the things you would do is costumes would get them in the costumes or whatever, and you might plug the mic in to the pack.
Perfect. So it's already rigged. You just plug it in.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
to sit there
And then
run the mic up in there.
usually they would have in those bigger pieces they'd have two already wired in. So if one kind of broke or started sounding weird, you could just swap it over real quick.
Now this is a Broadway production.
Right.
There's not margin for error. If your mic cuts out in the middle of you can't just stop. Hey, everybody, stop. So that would be some pretty serious pressure.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and of course it's live, so things do happen.
Yeah.
And we had a really good clean run in Birmingham, but there are times where they do have to stop the show. If something happens, if a piece gets hung up backstage, and it presents a danger, they will, sorry everybody, it's going to take us 5 minutes, close the curtain, fix whatever needs to fix, open the curtain, and on with the show. Mm-hmm. And luckily that happens very rarely. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like somebody may miss a cue and not bring a piece of scenery on, and now the people have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of cool to see, like, one time I was going, this scene doesn't look right. I couldn't immediately figure it out, but somebody missed a cue. They didn't bring a big piece of scenery on, and so instead of like dancing on top of a rock or whatever, everybody's just kind of dancing on the stage, and I was like, I don't remember this. But yeah, they were able to go on with it, and there were a couple times where somebody's mic did cut out, and the A2 who was touring with the company, he was in the wings, because we've got comms set up between everybody, and they have radios to each other, and I was on the radio with them, and they'd be like, hey, you need to go check this guy out, he's coming off stage right, figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they would change the mic out or do whatever they needed to do and solve the problem, and hopefully it would get solved efficiently, and you wouldn't have to,
Sounds like you get very good at efficiently solving problems.
Yeah.
It's like
Quickly, subtly. And
Yeah.
kind of like playing improv.
Yeah, there was, I think, one time where the antennas, and I think this might have been Wicked, just weren't picking up the wireless mics. And so it was like, the curtains are going up, and we're like climbing this truss tower to rig a paddle on it and plug the wire into the paddle, and it's like, all right, first note, and then bam, and it just happened right on time. It's like, the signal's good now. And
Now,
so
is the paddle some kind of a signal
antenna,
amplifier?
yeah,
Okay.
like an antenna.
Okay.
So like the wireless mics, they have an antenna, and they're actually, the mic pack is a transmitter, so you have to have an antenna to help with that, boost that signal or boost the range of the signal.
Kind of like a repeater.
Yeah. And so you can put those all over. Just helps you ensure that you're not going to have a wireless frequency dropout during the performance. And one of the joys of dealing with wireless microphones is, it's cool because they're wireless, and it allows a lot of freedom for the actors. But it's wireless, so you've got to deal with like the dropouts, and then the stuff we use now is you can lock the settings down on the pack, and so the actor can't inadvertently change frequencies, which would cause you to lose the signal. Or there's something like that. But if an antenna breaks off the transmitter or something gets funky with that, you have to be able to solve that problem. And I've had on corporate shows, you may put a lavalier in somebody's pocket, and then they may be talking and fidgeting and turn it off. Or
Not much you
open
can
the
do about
battery
that.
door, or something, and just so there's a lot of little things you can do, and some guys
put
some
gaff tape over the power button.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And some people, actually don't like it when you lock the packs, because they've all had that one time where the sound guy didn't turn them off, and then they're backstage saying things they shouldn't be, or in the bathroom, or
Right.
This is the crappiest production I've ever worked on.
yeah, exactly.
Lion King, Schmayan King.
So yeah,
I
that's.
can't wait till I go back to New York.
Well, my next question: did you choose stage work, or did stage work choose you? It sounds like you kind of ran into it right after school.
Yeah, I actually started in high school with our theater program at Mountain Brook High School, and the TD at the time was a cool guy, and
Technical director.
yeah, technical director, and we had some good productions, good musicals and stuff like that, and they had it's a high school in a nice area, so they had a good budget for arts, and so they had some pretty decent music classes and whatnot, and we had a decent little stage and scene shop, and I would be on the running crew for those, and kind of getting into college, I didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. So
Like
I
many of us.
started. Do I?
Like all of us.
Yeah, exactly. But I was interested in theater, and started taking a theater practicum just for an extra hour's worth of credit, and I go in and work in the scene shop, and help build stuff, paint stuff, whatever needed to happen that day, and got into theatrical lighting through that. And when I was at UAB, we had to do an internship, and so I actually ended up doing an internship with the Alice Stevens Center, which they had sort of recently finished as we were going through. And that's where I started getting a little more into the audio side of it. But being theater shows, I mean, you may have a bigger electrics crew, so that was a skill I always kind of kept up with. And I mean, so in a way, I kind of chose it. And then, as I became more skilled and kind of branched out a little bit with my knowledge and my capabilities, I was just kind of sitting back one day and finished up my taxes and was like, huh, I actually made quite a bit of money this year. I'm getting kind of good at this, and I kind of like it.
So for several years there, it's like one day I'm going to get a real job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then one day you realize, oh wait, this is my
I have a
real
real
job.
job.
Yeah, and
Surprise, surprise.
and it's funny because my dad would, he would always be asking me like, so what are you working on, and this and that, and what's, have you ever tried doing this, or have you ever thought about going into that, and it's like, no, Dad, blah, blah, and it's like, I'm not living with him, so I'm kind of making it, but I'm not, not really. You got to have a roommate still, that kind of stuff, and everything. And then, I started working on a tour with the corporate company I work with, and I'd never heard of the guy, but he was Dave Ramsey, and I was just kind of talking with him. Yeah, we started this new tour as a financial guy like Dave Ramsey, and I was like, oh, really? You're working with Dave? That's cool. So all of a sudden now I'm like bona fide.
My dad loves Dave Ramsey. I like Dave Ramsey. I love the
cool philosophy.
You might have picked up a few financial tips from him.
I did, yeah.
Get out of debt. Stay debt free. What is it?
Yeah, debt free.
I just love how you're getting all this
Baby
credit for
steps.
someone that initially you'd never heard of. I can relate. I have had music teachers, and then I was talking to someone not long ago that said, "Wow, you studied in Prague with Ladislav Kubik?" And I was like,
Really?
"Yeah." I mean, I didn't know anything about him at the time, other than he was willing to go to Prague and teach a bunch of Americans. But
Yeah.
turns out that was a pretty big deal.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how those kind of connections form and blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a really important side of it as you get into the professional aspect, because, you may not think who you're working for is that big a deal, but somebody else down the line is.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody you're working with or for now may become a big deal.
Right,
Uh-huh.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember when Zach Brown was in a Battle of the Bands competition in Birmingham.
No way.
And I think they had just released their first album, but they were still a truck and trailer. I mean, they would drive themselves to gigs and stuff. And he played here, and I was like, dude, if this guy doesn't win this competition, these people are messed up. And I got a CD. I was like, these guys are great. These don't make it. There's no hope for anybody. And 2 years later, they're hosting they're featured at the CMA Awards.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So, any of you young and budding stars to be who are listening to Music Studio 101,
Don't lose hope.
and don't forget the little people.
And don't forget the little, don't forget the little people, because, yeah. So outside of the BA in music tech, did you have any other formal training, or was it just sort of a learn by doing situation?
It was mostly learn by doing. And one of the biggest things that an education can prepare you for is the actual process of learning.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is, you have to learn how to learn and how to learn efficiently, because you can spend hours reading the wrong kind of crap, or just hey, if you know what the gear is, you can go to the website now, especially download a manual, read it. So when you walk in the door, you actually have an idea of what's going on. with the
RTFM.
equipment. Yeah.
RTFM.
Yeah.
Read the freaking manual.
All right.
I was going to go ahead and curse and give you a chance to put the little guitar lick
Thank
over
you.
it.
Thank you, Chris.
But
I got it. Yeah, I take all my paper manuals and just throw them right in the recycling bin, because everything's got a PDF now.
Oh, yeah.
You just,
yeah.
boop, zoom right in.
Yeah, and it's great, and it can help you troubleshoot.
I'm the laziest one here. I just sit down and play with it for an hour.
Right. Yeah.
So you can learn a lot that way, I find.
Yeah.
You can.
What you were saying a second ago kind of harkens this great quote that you shared, or actually we shared of yours, believe it or not. Matt, do you remember what that was?
Oh, wait, no. Was it the quote of with the BA teaching you just enough to ask the right questions?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you learn
yeah.
just enough to be able to ask the right kind of questions where you don't sound like a complete novice.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I got into the first of my audio gigs was your sound hanging out with a soundboard with the guys that by this point they've already figured out you're a decent worker, you're pretty smart, blah blah blah, and instead of going, you know what all those knobs do, you can like ask an intelligent questions like, so when you group these, how do you like do your gain structure and like how do you organize your mix this way or that way, and then some guys will just love to geek out with that
sure,
stuff
yeah.
and go on and on about it and keep your ears open, listen to what they say, and then you may be BSing with somebody down the road and you can be like, yeah, well, I know some people like to do it this way, how do you like to do it? And it's like now you've started a next level kind of conversation with somebody that may be very much more experienced with you. And one of the like a case in point was I think it was like James Taylor was here at the concert hall, and I was again doing house audio, and it was kind of interesting because usually on big touring shows you have boxes that are labeled with a company name, and you can figure out, oh, this is a PRG show.
Animal cases and stuff like that.
Yeah, or this is a, like a JBL rig. They've got the Vertex. Okay, cool. I kind of know what that is, and da 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 da. There were no labels on anything.
Oh man,
it was like, who are these guys? They're with James Taylor, so they got to be pretty good. But there's like the speakers didn't have a badge on the box. Like there was nothing. There was just connectors and the physical enclosure, and it's like, that's interesting. The amps were like some old amps, and finally I saw like a Clare Brothers, badge on some guy's like road, briefcase. It's like, okay, so it's a Clare Brothers show. And Clare Brothers, they do a lot of R&D. They're always trying to figure out a better way to build a box, better sounding box, all that kind of stuff. And we were eating lunch, and the head sound guy was, in line in front of me. And it's like, so how do you like working for Clare Brothers? And he's like, well, I guess I'm their vice president of engineering. and he had built the PA like as a prototype.
Oh my!
To bring to smaller venues to do kind of smaller format shows with. And I mean, it was literally like one of the best sounding shows I've ever heard. It was like listening to a CD. I mean, the live quality sound was just perfect, and just one of those kind of cool things. And I have no idea if that model of PA ever made it past a prototype stage, but
it's probably just his PA that he takes
but the conversation kind of started with like, hey, I think at the time Yamaha had just released their PM series of digital consoles, which became the flagship standard for a while for live production audio engineering. And I just kind of asked him, so how do you like your 5D? It's like, yeah, since we helped him redesign the preamps, I like it a lot better. It's like, hey, this guy, he may be your above average kind of tech. So, it's just one of those things where asking a slightly intelligent, question,
Yeah, well, you're forming relationships while you're learning all of this stuff
exactly.
too. Yeah.
And speaking of people like that who you looked up to down the road, do you have any particular, we all have like in our career path, I think one or two mentors that we consider to be the one that we kind of acknowledge the most for where we are right now. Do you have any good mentors that you want to give a shout out or?
I mean, there's been quite a few.
And what you like about
people, over the years that have helped me advance, and given me opportunities. And a lot of the guys are still out there doing it today. And my buddy Warren Fambro is, a guy that helped me a lot, learning audio and really getting to the point where you can be an efficient and, execute quickly. Either a stage patch, which would be like your group of bands that you may be dealing with for an all-day festival. You have to have a plan to mic each one of those bands, and they're all going to be different. So you have to organize and be ready for anything, but also be flexible. So it's kind of that almost two things that shouldn't work together, organization and flexibility, but you have to work it, so that you can kind of do anything, anytime.
And Warren kind of introduced you to this
Yeah,
notion.
he helped me with that, and we did a lot of corporate shows together as well. And like Carl Zero was the technical director at the Alice Stevens Center when I started, and he helped me with both a lot in the lighting and audio aspects as I was kind of starting out. And we still work together today. He's in the local stagehands union as well. And then, just I guess the stage manager for the symphony orchestra, Baron Melton.
Baron, I remember
I know Baron.
And he was an audio guy at Town and Gown Theater before they tore it down and remodeled it and renamed it Virginia Sanford Theater.
Okay.
And I guess they didn't tear the building down. But he was I was running Spotlight on like Tommy and Evita and Kiss of the Spider Woman, a bunch of stuff that we did early 2000s, somewhere in there. And he was always the mixer, and so we kind of became buddies. And I was actually doing that while I was at UAB, and so that was kind of just a part-time thing, and you may work. I think it was like first show I did there was like 6 weeks with all the rehearsals. I think it was Evita at Town and Gown, and the first, like, kind of bigger, if you will, not strictly associated with a school or whatever production. And, it was like 6 weeks or something with all the rehearsals and the shows and everything. And at the end of it, it's like they gave me a little stipend, and it's like $200 or $300, I think I figured it out. It was like, like 15 cents an hour if you did, all the math or something. But yeah, but it was,
back then it was $300.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
College kid could do great things with
Right,
that kind of money.
right. And now it's kind of like, geez, that's on the low end of a day rate,
I'm not taking a $300 job.
This is where I hang up the phone.
Yeah,
This is where I hang up the phone.
So is that for 8 hours? Yeah, what's a day?
Maybe a 4-hour mini or something, or maybe. So, well, because we are students, because we always want to do a good job at whatever we're doing, and you've worked with a lot of people, are there any particular likes or dislikes in people that you see coming up in their attitude or in the way they approach the job, things that you would prefer to say, do it this way?
Yeah, and, whenever you kind of see somebody doing things dangerous, you want to, stop that.
Right.
For sure. And, a lot of times you may just be watching somebody and they're just kind of doing it the hard way. It's like you are going to kill yourself, like struggling with this 4/0 cable in the way you're doing it. So, hey, let me show you the easy way to do that.
Because you're going to screw it up for everybody if you wrap that cable wrong. The next person that tries to unwrap that cable is going to be in a spaghetti mess.
Yeah, it's like when you see them, breaking over
the elbow roll.
The mic cable over the elbow or the extension cord over the elbow. You're like, oh, hey, buddy, hold on.
Or the thing I did for the longest time where you take the XLR, you put end to end, double it up, stretch it out, double it, or half it, break it in half, and then you have like about a 3-foot thing of cables you just tie in a big knot.
Yeah.
And that was my go-to for a while until I learned how to properly wrap a cable and how well they fit in my kit once I finally did that,
Yeah, and that helps you, because you organize your gear to be ready for, problem solving, So if you have a line that, somebody rolls over it or, gets cut or just for whatever reason stops working, you've got a mic cable you can grab, uncoil it really easy, reestablish that patch, and you're going again.
It takes 2 seconds.
Instead of looking like a moron fiddling with this,
trying to
wadded
untangle
up knot.
Hold on.
I've done that before to problem solve and troubleshoot, and pick up a cable that's not rolled right, just throw it away and like, go get another one that is rolled right that you can deal with quickly, you know. So yeah, that's and then, you know, on the touring crews and stuff, you know, my job on the Dave Show was to kind of establish the feeder run, the trunk line for the electrics and all that stuff. So you kind of work with a different group of guys everywhere you go, but doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. That kind of taught me a lot about communicating and being very specific as to what you want, because you can say, okay, yeah, we're gonna get the cable out of this box, we're gonna run over here to this thing, and you know, you can get 10 different variations on what you, the same thing that you said, and you're just like, huh, how did they even, like, am I speaking the right language? Like, what is going on here? This is, so you have to, okay, so we're going to start here, we're going to go around this corner, and then we're going to do this, and then, you know, so you have to kind of break it down in little bite-sized pieces.
And then I bet when you've worked with the same people a lot, you almost develop your own language that only you understand.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you don't even have to talk about what you're doing anymore. You can just be doing what you're doing, you know. Yeah. And everybody's kind of, you know, they find their whatever needs to be worked on, and it's all just happening. And you're talking about the ball game, or, you know, telling stories, or
it's just almost muscle memory.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people that get into your line of work end up being freelancers, at least at first, if not fully. Mm-hmm. And I think that the advantage from, if I was working with the same company, what if I spent the last years working for a company who did it wrong?
Right.
So as a freelancer, you get to work with, like, you know, 10 to 50 different companies a year, probably. I don't know, on a good year.
Yeah, it depends.
But you can really kind of point out the pros and take what you like from them, mm-hmm. and then learn what you don't like, trash it from the others.
Yeah, that's true, because you can pick up some bad habits. You know, like, you know, because there may be some, you know, kind of, I guess if you will say, you know, lower end companies where, you know, they may have just one cable trunk for all their cable, you know, and it's, you know, so everything gets tossed in there, or, you know, so you may think that's cool, just put all the cables in one trunk. You know, but then when you need a power cord, it's like, you got to dig through all this XLR, or if you need a quarter-inch cable, it's like, you got to, you know, you spend waste time, you know, doing the wrong thing, you know.
Absorbing bad habits.
Yeah.
It sounds like it can also almost become like a sort of artistry. I mean, you take what you like in the methodology, you know, and expand on that, and after a while, you know, you have sort of your way of doing things, your personal style.
Yep.
You know, that is a reflection of the way you like a show is run. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, when you start advancing, you know, I mean, you know, when I started out, it was like, you know, here's the stuff we need to get on the truck. All right, here, make sure to get all this, make sure to get all that. And now it's like, hey, go to the shop and just get what you want. You know, just tell me what you use, so, you know, I know what's out. You know,
right.
And so it's you definitely get to a level of proficiency with what you're doing. You learn what to take and what you don't need, and don't have to waste time dealing with heavy stuff that you're just moving out of the way constantly to
have to move it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Work smarter,
not harder.
Exactly.
One of the things that have always fascinated me about this work is that it is a mental kind of work and also a physical kind of work. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you're sort of doing both at the same time.
Right.
You know, and so can you educate us on, like, what specific kind of skills are involved in that kind of work? You do a lot of climbing, do a lot of rigging, do a lot of heavy lifting, mm-hmm. but also have a lot of knowledge behind that.
Yeah, especially when you know, you kind of first start out. You may be more of a general, like, box pusher, if you will, or you know, cable coiler, or, you know, you help schlep the heavy stuff,
or go get me the blank.
Yeah, exactly. and you know, that's kind of the way it has to be. You know, I mean, you got to prove yourself, for one. You got to prove you have some knowledge. You have to prove that you care, and that you want to do things right, and you want to do things, you know, quick and easy and safe. And you know, I guess a lot of, I've always been a little bit mechanically inclined. You know, I was not like I'm a super mechanic or whatever, but I, you know, can do some work on my vehicles. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, if you will. I like, my dad always taught me, if like I had this old Buick, one of my first cars, it's like, oh, yeah, your water pump went out. Well, here's a Haynes manual. I'll be upstairs. Call me if you have a problem, And this was before YouTube.
Yeah, right. It was you.
So I'm like reading
manual.
through this manual, going, what's the, and he'd come back and check on me every once in a while. And, I got it fixed and got it running. And then, there was one time where I think I hit a sign and, damaged the bumper and the hood. He's like, oh, well. Your weekend plans just changed. Let's go to the. We're going to the junkyard to find that header.
You're gonna have to scout those tickets, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, "No, I'm not calling it a junkyard. This is your deal." You call a bunch of junkyard. Hey, do you have a white header for a 84 Buick Regal? Yeah, we got one. $100.
I was talking just this morning about my first computer that I bought, and my parents didn't know anything about it.
Right.
Anything at all. So any problems we had with the computer, and again, this is before Google. This is before any, so it's
right.
I just had to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, RTFM.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very cool the way YouTube and Google and stuff has really revolutionized a lot of that.
And it's made it a lot easier. It's made it a lot easier just to find information.
Right.
And, I've seen a lot of things now where people are kind of worried about it because they're saying we don't learn skills anymore because, we can just go to the internet and get a how-to for anything. We're not keeping any knowledge in our actual brains anymore. And, it's kind of a problem because where you start out learning, it's just saying, okay, well, I don't know how to do this, and you read the manual or whatever. You're not just learning how to do that. You're learning how to problem solve. You're learning how to think critically and things like that. And now that that those skills are becoming in short supply because people just go look it up on YouTube.
The Cliff Notes of life.
The Cliff Notes of life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the you still have to be able to physically do the work. Some of the a lot of the cable we use, when a mic cable isn't heavy, but 100 of them are.
Or a 100-foot cable.
Yeah, and then if you're you got a 52 channel console, your snake is going to be big and heavy.
Jeez.
And 100-foot 52 channel snakes is
That's large.
That's a big heavy box to deal with. And if you're not paying attention, you can roll it over somebody's foot or into their ankle or really mess somebody's day up. So you have to be able to push it up the ramp at the end of the night, bring it down the ramp in the morning, not run over yourself or anybody else.
Well, regarding the physicality of it all, let's go back to, are there things that you do or that your crew does before? Do you guys do stretches or warm-ups or?
Yeah, especially as I've gotten older, I've had to incorporate some different stretches and recovery techniques, if you will. And some of that I learned by visiting a chiropractor. And there is a you have to take care of yourself. And one of the first things I learned was good footwear is a good investment.
I thought that was going somewhere else. Don't be hungover.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean
that too.
That too. I mean, and when I first started, especially here with the local union where they have a pretty strict seniority thing, I would literally get calls and 8:15 in the morning. Hey, can you come in? Yeah, when? 15 minutes ago? And, I may have been at the bar till, 2 in the morning the night before, and it's like, oh, God, I just said yes,
You got to understand, I didn't plan on working today.
Exactly.
It's amazing to me that when I was younger, I could do anything hungover.
Oh, yeah.
I could take exams, or I could work construction, anything hungover. Now... up until recently, I would occasionally fill in for my friend selling cigars at a cigar shop, and now I can't sell cigars hungover. I was like, this is just not, Used to, I could do anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I can just deal with a hangover. Now I can't stand behind a counter and sell cigars to people hungover. It's just torturous.
So get an early start on not being hungover.
Get an early start. Learn to not be hungover now.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, that was a little debauchery digression, but before that, you were talking about footwear, like proper...
Yeah, I mean, when I started out, I'd always get the $15 pair of, Vans or whatever was on sale, and then, oh man, my feet are hurting. It's like, oh, let's get some insoles. So then it's like, then those wear out, and you're like, man, I don't want to buy another pair of shoes. And it's like, finally got like a pair of Merrells one day. I was like, oh, these are awesome, Wore those out. Now it's like, yeah, I won't spend less than like $100, $150 on a pair of shoes, or
It's an investment.
It is, yeah, because when you're on your feet all day, I mean that's your interface to the ground, And,
It's important if you're waiting tables too.
Yeah,
Good set of shoes.
You could probably write that off, I would imagine.
yeah, especially if it's like protective equipment, yeah, for sure.
So what do you do to challenge yourself at this point? What do you do to branch out and learn new things? Because we're all the time learning, right? We never
Right.
get to a point where, well, I'm just a professional. I know everything.
I've been kind of delving a little deeper into sort of the electrical engineering side, if you will. Power distribution is a big one. Learning about the different formulas you need to calculate loads on circuits, on anything you may be using, and that kind of stuff. And it's really important in the film world, where when I'm typically so far on a film, I've been in the electrics department, and it's a little different in stage work because when you set up a stage or a touring show, it's like you kind of establish everything first thing in the morning, and you get set, and then you wait for the show to start.
There's one stage, one
Yeah,
setting.
there's one stage, there's one setup. So when you get that done, when you get that ready, it's all pretty much in place until load out at the end of the night.
To the craft service table.
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool to just kind of hang out and you come back and run spots for the show or help with the scene changes or whatever, depending on whatever crew you've been on. I kind of gravitated towards electrics, and because I've dealt with the signal path with audio, and when I was working on the crew, they were like, oh, you know how to use a meter, go meter the power, and so I've always kind of been into that side of it. And then when you're working on a film, it's like you run the cable the same way, similar to in the beginning of the day, but then it's like, now we got to move everything because the camera's looking this way. So, you have to be able to move it quickly and efficiently and safely, and you're doing it over and over and over. And then the lights may have a giant header cable that you have to struggle with. So you have to be very intentional about your plan to hook it up so that you don't have to repatch it, or you're trying to struggle with this big heavy cable through the middle of a set where people are trying to do all kinds of different things all right now.
Wow.
And that'll happen on a crazy day. That'll happen 10 to 12 times, on a good day, 3 or 4.
Well, yeah, we were just doing like live recently, and I think one day we had some obscene number of setups, like 87 or...
Oh,
So this is an action movie with cars crashing and things flipping everywhere. I don't know how you guys pulled that off.
Yeah, and it was pretty crazy, and the director was liked to move really fast, and he knew what he wanted, and was when he got it, he's like, all right, next. All right, let's move right over here.
You're kind of hoping the actors mess it up a few times so you can get a catching breath.
Yeah, exactly.
Have to move all these things again.
It's like, really? I just got this cup of coffee.
Now it's going to be a cold cup of coffee. Before we get too far, I'm going to ask you, what is the proper way to wrap a cable?
Well, definitely clockwise. You want to, if you don't over under, you got to at least get that little quarter turn in there. Mm-hmm. And then, something small like XLR, I'll pick that up and wrap it in my hand, or an extension cord or stinger. And then with the heavier stuff, it has to be on the ground, and
like a coil on the ground.
Yeah, coil it on the ground, and I kind of stand over it and pull it to me, and one of the tricks is you can take the ends. So you have, you're at one end, you grab the other end, you carry it over to you. So that way when you're pulling, you're not dragging the entire weight of the cable. You're only doing half of it.
Clever.
And then when you're dealing with like film stuff, you want to have both the ends meet up with both the ties so that you don't have loose ends flopping all over the place. And that's one of the ways people will look at you and just see the way you wrap a cable and be like, I'm never hiring that guy again.
Oh yeah, right.
I mean, and they don't you never even get told. It's just it's just like, hey,
it kind of goes back to some stuff we were saying.
We say this. We actually said this a few times, but it bears repeating, right? Take it away.
It does. Matt. Yeah, you can miss opportunities, and people will never ever tell you why. Nobody's going to call you up and say, "Hey, we had this great gig for you to play, but we're not going to give it to you because you're obnoxious." That call doesn't happen, right? You just don't get the gig because you're obnoxious, and then you'll sit around wondering, why can't I get any more gigs? Things like that happen. This is why you want to be the kind of person who wants to know how to do it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like anything else, your attitude can get you, so far. Your experience can get you so far, but you've got to be able to, apply the knowledge that you're learning and do things the right way, and not cut corners and.
And speaking of presentation, to some degree, like the audio gear that I use in film and production is all top of the line for what it is. You know? Which now you can go off and spend a lot of money and still not be good at stuff.
Right.
But it does produce a really good sound. I show up with the Pelican case with my company logo on it. I try and make everything nice and very professional looking. My cables are never dirty and crappy. But do you have like a particular kit, or is there gear that is expected of someone in the entry level and beyond? For
especially entry level stage work, you got to have a good pair of gloves. Crescent wrench, adjustable wrench, flashlight are kind of a minimum, if you will. Leatherman and a pocket knife are both great things to have. So yeah, you're kind of expected to at least have that, like Leatherman, C-wrench, gloves, flashlight, and of course, bearing in mind that you're already dressed appropriately to do physical, manual, labor kind of work. You don't show up in flip-flops.
Not if you want to get the job again.
And, we've had to send people home. It's like, what are you doing?
Go get some Merrills and call me back.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta, at least a pair of tennis shoes. I mean, come on. And
well, it's tricky because you have to dress for comfort, but you also have to wear this. Be kind of all black, And
and then when you're loading in and stuff, if you're not on the show call, it doesn't really matter so much what you wear.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I always have a change of clothes, a pair of blacks in my vehicle, because it's like, hey, I know you're rigging, but we made it through the whole list again, and we need you to run spots tonight. Okay, well, I've got my blacks in the car.
Yeah. The guy on the show call has all whites and he's wearing sandals. We need to get somebody else.
We had kind of an emergency situation one time where there was, two crews working, next door buildings, and the other building was just doing a trade show exhibition thing, and they were like, hey, we need another guy over here for a spotlight. And so he just came on over, and he was in jeans and a white shirt, and they were like, well, forget it. They still needed him, and he was on the truss anyway. So it's like,
they can't see him through the shiny, godlike spotlight shining in their faces.
It worked out, but it would have been more professional had he been,
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the hardware and electronics you're sort of expected to know and have an understanding of. And because this job is as much intellectual as it is.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what your, what department you're in or what your, actual task is, it can vary wildly. Because with lighting, it's just dealing with different kinds of lights and knowing how to, manipulate those if, you're using like a Leco or something, you want to know how to work the shutter cuts and, plug things in and leave a little slack if you have to move it and focus it and, how to run the barrel so you can focus the beam of the light. You have to know that kind of stuff. And then if you're, working with film lights like HMIs, I mean, you have to know how to hook the header cables up and, not do things when the breaker's on and, not...
There's a specific order you need to keep in mind when connecting electronics.
Yep.
And things carrying 1,000 plus volts.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things that were not that big a deal when you were talking about hooking up your HDMI to your TV.
Right, exactly.
All of a sudden, they're very, very important.
Life is not at stake when you're hooking up your HDMI.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is another important thing.
Yeah, just depending on, what you're working on, because I know a little bit about a lot of stuff now. Just over the years. I mean, I've worked on video crews, I've worked on, lighting crews, I've worked on audio crews, I've worked on rigging crews, so I know a lot about a lot of things. And, so it's just specifically what are you doing that day? I mean, when you're an audio guy, I mean, you have to know how, your gain structure is going to work. You have to know your mixer. You have to know the qualities of the microphones. You don't want to put, like a RE20 on the hi-hat,
Right, okay. RE20, that's what kind of mic?
That's like a big, large dynamic microphone.
Okay.
You would see it, in a lot of the older kind of TV shows, like a end address, like mic on a boom. It has a very good, like low-end quality. A lot of people would maybe use it on a kick drum or something in the old days, or something like that, or like sounds good when you use it on a stand-up bass. You get a good low-end response with them. And, it's like little things like, if somebody's like, hey, patch the drum kit, and you do something silly like, put the 421 on the kick drum, or like the little pencil condenser, if you do that, they might be like, hey, man, what are you doing?
This is not a time for experimentation.
This is the avant-garde drum mic.
Well, when you put the 57 on the snare and, use the 414s for overheads and, and the D2s on the toms, it's like, well, I don't want to use the 414s today, so let's put these other ones on here. But, you don't look like an idiot.
Yeah.
You've made at least a good choice.
You're in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because, you may, if you're, like, say, using your kit that's from your shop, you have your mic package, and you kind of set it up. And then the artist might come in and say, hey, do you mind if I use my mics? Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, what are they? Well, I have a kit of Heil Handy Pros. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Let's hook them up.
Please.
Well, I've got these things from Guitar Center. I haven't used them yet.
They're used when I got them.
Samson? Nah, I think the kit's already patched. Let's just use my stuff.
Right. Save your stuff. We don't want to mess it up. Don't mess up my stuff.
We just, we're already set up. Thank you very much. Yeah. And so, just knowing a little bit about, a lot of different things, it helps you, be prepared for whatever may come through the door at you. And, that's, as I got into rigging, and we learn about fall protection.
Ah.
And, we have a newly installed fall protection system in our arena here in town.
Whoa.
And so that's been nice. And then,
like harnesses and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so how to use that equipment properly.
Because you want to use it properly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key, because it's designed to work a specific way. And I do the CMA award show almost every year in Nashville. And, that's a big one. And I got on the rigging crew for that. I think I started in like 2011. And then I usually run spotlights on the show. And then they have a big, nice fall rest system. And it's, you maybe... Their high end of the grid is like 130 feet, something like that. And, their low end is like 90 feet. So you have to, be aware of working on
Their
heights.
low end is 90 feet.
I would be the slowest rigger ever.
Yeah.
Because I'd be inching and grasping for life and inching along.
Yeah, and, when you start, it is unnerving, and then you kind of get used to it and you know, like it's scarier not to make your mortgage payment than it is.
Oh God! Yeah, I was wondering when that comes second nature.
It's scary not to make your mortgage
When you have to
payment.
survive.
But yeah, I mean, you want to know how to, you know, hook into a fall arrest system, or, you know, essentially like use aspects of like lead climbing when you're in a building that may not have one, you know, and then, you know, at that point, yeah, you may be kind of crab walking, like they say, on the beams instead of, you know, just standing up and walking out there, you know, like you're a deer in the forest, you know. But, you know, there's, you know, and especially now, the safety factor is really starting to kind of take over the production industry. Whereas 10 years ago, even, it was sort of like, you know, just hey, get up there on that truss and focus these lights. I mean, you have a ladder to get up there, but there might not be anything to tie into if you're up there. You know, and if you have a harness and you have some gear, you can at least, you know, take a climbing strap, put it around the truss, and hook into that. So you're, you know, not life and death if you fall, but you know that's not the best way to do it.
Right.
And then now, I mean, if you hardly ever have to go up and focus on a truss anymore because of all the moving lights, but you know, there's almost always going to be that fall arrest rope, you know, that you clip into when you're up there. And I've actually had a couple friends been saved by retractable yo-yos, lifelines, and
Oh, so is it like it slows down as you fall kind of thing?
yeah, and it literally will stop you. Like, in this one guy was climbing up and down truss ladders all the time, and one day, and then just misjudged something, or you know, didn't you know, get a hand and a foot on at the same time, and he, you know, he lost his grip, and thunk, it caught and held him, and it spun him around in the air, and then he grabbed on the ladder again.
Wow.
And, you know, they were able to, you know, get him down and safely, and you know, it sort of.
That would be my last day as a rigger.
God, man. Well, hey, a lot of people are probably wondering. We can go ahead and clarify this now.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering, does a climber or a rigger get hazard pay? Is
Oh,
there?
yeah.
Is there?
It's a higher rate.
It's
usually,
much higher, I imagine.
yeah. And depending on where you are, what contract you may be working under, yeah, it's typically quite a bit better pay.
And you've done all that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And yeah, it's kind of fun, and it's, you know, to me, the sort of varied skills I have and crews I work on makes it enjoyable, because it's kind of like, even when it's the same old, it may be different. Like, you know, tomorrow I'm going to go rig, and then, like, you know, Tuesday I might be doing something else, you know, where you're just a stagehand and you don't have to be responsible really for anything. You know?
Which is kind of nice sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then, you know, like next week I've got some corporate shows that, you know, we'll do 2 or 3 of those. And then so it's, you know, just there's always a varying level of responsibility that I have. So I'm not always, you know, having to be, you know, top peak.
Yeah.
And, you know,
all the
sometimes I
pressure.
just come in and be the neck down, sort of like, oh, yeah, I'll help you.
I like that. There's been shoots where I was the audio supervisor,
Right.
and then there's been shoots where I was just a mixer, and I was like, you know, sometimes it's nice just to show up and be like, hey, what do you need?
Yeah,
I used
exactly.
to say it. Well, because we've spoken of a good number of stage positions, can I do like a thing where I give you a rundown, where we give the listeners kind of a rundown? If I give you a position, you kind of tell me what they do or what's expected. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you mentioned A2 a couple of times.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the A1 and the A2. Mm-hmm. What is the A1?
So A1 would be typically your like front of house mixer
Okay.
guy. And,
Responsible for what all the audience is hearing.
Yep. Yeah. So he'll be the final like interface to where, you know, it's actually, you know, he's controlling the product, the audio, you know, for
So that's what the A
final
stands
product.
for. So it's audio one.
Yeah, audio.
Okay.
And he's the department head.
So yeah, he'll be the department head
Okay.
typically, and the A2 is helps him out, do whatever. You know, like he'll be the backstage guy that if there's a problem, he's got to creep out there on stage and fix it, or he's got to intercept the actor on the wings, or, you know, he's the kind of the stage guy. He'll be kind of responsible for the stage patch, if you will, like you know, he'll work with the mixer and they'll develop an input list. Mm-hmm. You know, the mixer will specify what mics he wants on certain things. A2 will go and do that.
Okay.
And, if you're on a big crew, maybe you have like an A3, which would be like your patch guy.
Okay.
And he will, handle everything.
Wrap cables.
And, like that gets patched on the stage. If you have a big stage box, he'll, go out and during the set change, he'll move microphones around and then he'll tell the front of house guy, hey, channel 17 is on the stage right guitar, channel 18 is on stage left guitar, channel 19 is on keys, or whatever, whatever you've been working with all day. He'll kind of establish his stage patch and then work from there and communicate that. And then, just depending on who all you've got on your crew.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I guess sometimes you have to be a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
When there's a smaller crew, like a skeleton crew.
Because you may be the only guy there, so you're the A1 and the A2.
And the A3 and the A4. And
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just the A.
I'm just the A.
Exactly.
Amen. Here's something a lot of people are probably curious about. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but just in case, let's go ahead and distinguish between a roadie and a stagehand.
Well, the roadie is typically a guy that travels with the tour with the band.
And apologies, is there a more politically correct way to say roadie?
I think a lot of them like to be called techs now.
Text, there you go.
I think the old school, kind of idea of basically it was a group of guys that liked to party with the band and they didn't mind helping them set up.
Picked them up at the bar.
And,
a little more complex than that these days.
Yeah, shows have gotten bigger. They've gotten more complex. The technology and the equipment has become very intricate. So now you have skilled people that will travel, and a lot of times they're on the tour representing a company that supplied the gear. Okay. So like the band doesn't own the LED wall typically.
Right.
That you may see in a lot of sets now. There's a video company that owns the LED wall, and they'll send a couple of techs out on tour with it. Same with the PA. You'll have usually now a separate PA company. A band isn't going to have a $2 million line array system and all the racks and stacks and consoles to run that. They may have a long-standing relationship with an audio company and they get the same thing every time, or maybe different every tour. Just kind of depending on what the budget and stuff is. So you have a group of guys from the audio company that go on that tour with that equipment package, and same with the lights. That might be a different company, And then you have big companies that can kind of supply everything, and they like to grab smaller companies.
But I imagine the roadie is these days with budgets. I would imagine they only travel the most important, like I think you were saying earlier, like department heads.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then pick up local people for the stagehands.
Yeah, exactly. So the stagehand would be the, like the groups of guys that, they're usually local. They may, depending on what kind of market you're in,
Regional,
they may kind of, travel a little bit regionally. I've done stuff in Atlanta. I've done stuff in Nashville. I've done stuff, over in Mississippi as stagehands. And, even in some of the bigger cities, when they have 2 or 3 big shows going on, they may pull from kind of all over. But they'll typically be local. And, I know guys that will kind of travel all over the place and just do like festival stagehand work. Which would be fun if you're young.
Because you're building stages.
Building stages and running the deck crew and stuff, doing the set changes, doing the spotlights, all that kind of stuff. And a roadie would be more like a supervisor, and they may be out representing the company that supplied the gear, but when they get to a venue, they've got to deal with they physically, like, you're not going to see the A1 running a snake on a tour. You're not going to see the A2 necessarily running the snake, but he's going to grab his guys and say, "Hey guys, run this snake."
Okay. Yeah.
And then when they're done setting up, all the big stuff has happened. Typically the stagehands will get cut, and then they'll cut down to a show crew, or if there's all day guys, they'll keep the all day guys. Et cetera, et cetera. And just kind of be hanging out, doing whatever you need to do.
And front of house mixer, that's the A1 typically. Is there any other positions we kind of missed? I know, well, for example, grip. I know in the film world, a grip is kind of what it sounds like, kind of the stagehand. I hate to say that because grip will tell you, wait a minute.
I know there's a stagehand designation in films, but I haven't really seen a lot of them. But yeah, grip and electrics, they work together to sort of be the lighting department, and they work with the cinematographer, director of photography, to establish the lighting and the shadows. Whatever it has to look like on film. Grip, provides shadows. Electricians provide light.
Good way to look at it. Yeah.
They work together
Yeah.
to make the picture happen, visually. And of course, then there's the set dressers that put all the little, doodads all over the place and, make it look like it's just a natural set, natural, environment.
Bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
So what is a best boy grip? I see that on credits all the time, and I've always wondered what
He is. So that goes back to the studio days where, they'd hire people, like I guess the key grip would be the head of the grip department. So be like, come on, you're going to work on this picture and bring your best boy.
Oh, okay.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
And, so that's the rumor I've heard anyway. But yeah, best boy electric, best boy grip, they're sort of the second.
The second in command. Okay.
Usually, like being on a bigger show, they'll be in charge of the truck.
Right. Okay.
And keeping track of what inventory is being used, for what shots, and then what if you've got a pre-rigging crew, and they're pulling stuff from the electric truck, he's got to keep account of that cable,
Right,
So when the gaffer says, "Hey, I need an 18K over here for this shot," the best boy's got to be like, "Yeah, we sent that ahead. We don't have an 18K here. I've got two 9Ks or whatever.
Right,
Here's what we have. Oh, I forgot. Okay, yeah, bring the 9K. So whatever.
18K are really big light. Just
Yeah,
so
they
you
are.
guys know.
18,000 watts.
It's like the sun. Cue the sun.
It is. Yes.
And that explains why there's no second best boy grip.
Right. Yeah, because after that you'd be just a grip,
just a
or
grip.
just an electrician. Whatever.
Well, we're talking a little bit here about the film set, but actually both of us, you and I, Chris, got our degrees in music technology, and somehow we found ourselves in the world of film and television.
Right.
So there's another thing. I mean, if you have the tech know-how, it can transfer over to other potential careers.
Absolutely.
Because even though I do a lot with music and I do a lot with audio production and this podcast and stuff like that, my main income is right now for film and television, the location audio work I do.
Right.
But I think it's kind of encouraging for others to know that there can be many, many career paths that can come from this one route.
Sure. Yeah, and especially if you get into the tech aspect of it, it can be pretty wide open. I mean, you do want to try and get some specialties, where audio is a specialty. When you get into like lighting design, that's very much a specialty, and rigging is a specialty. So the more specialties you can gain knowledge in, the better off you're going to be trying to get gigs because you're just going to have more opportunities, And
it helps to have a well-rounded knowledge of the other departments you're working with. That way
sure.
you know how to work with them. You understand the chain of command,
Right.
whatever, how to stay out of people's way and yet still look like you're doing something.
Yeah, that can be important.
All right. So, story time.
Story time.
What's a really good story?
Let's see.
And it can be educational, but as far as I'm concerned, honestly, it doesn't have to be.
Maybe you got burned really bad and learned from it. Maybe you had an aha moment.
Well, there was, one time I was in catering and, just kind of relaxing after most of the load-in was done. And it wasn't quite lunchtime yet, but it was, still an air-conditioned place. And so I'm just kind of sitting there and, this guy's sitting down the other end of the table. He's like, "Hey, you reading the sports section?" It's like, "No, I'm not." "Here you go." He's like, what about the Braves or whatever? He's like, I don't really like baseball. I think it's kind of a stupid sport and blah, blah, blah. Well, it was John Fogerty. Like one of the biggest like baseball fans probably rock and roll on tour. You know, I just told him I thought his sport was stupid. He's like, I didn't know who he was. I'm just sitting there, killing time.
I think baseball's kind of stupid. John Fogerty.
And,
wow.
and there's been some really cool shows we worked on. A lot of the Broadway ones are very fun. And, there's we had a guy gets fired off a spotlight gig.
Okay.
You really have to be paying attention.
Missed a lot of cues.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
I guess that's the one way.
It's a script, kind of. I think they have like a script.
Yeah, they have a script. And then the girl that was calling spots, the lady that was calling spots, was trying to help him out, and say, hey, and at some point, it was just like, she was like, hey, what do I need to do so I don't have to do your cues and my cues? Like, what? And he said something back to her. And you just heard her like, ah. It's like, ooh, that guy just got fired.
That was what she said. That was her response.
Yeah, she's just like, ah. And I was like, I could just like almost physically imagine her like trying to like not strangle the guy with like every like ounce of self-control that she still had.
So attitude. Keep your attitudes in check.
Yeah, and very much so. And I've seen the same thing with, hey buddy, you mind wrapping that coil clockwise for me? I've been coiling cable for 25 years. You know what? Never mind. Just put it in the box. Go do something else.
Right? Go do something.
Why don't you help the truck loaders? Yeah. Yeah, and just depending on, what gig you're on, if it's a union gig, you may not have that opportunity. You may be stuck with the guy. But, so some of the other ones that, when you have a non-departmentalized, even union crew, they can usually be generally skilled in a bunch of different things, so they can do different things and different tasks at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's some cool stuff. Like when Eric Clapton was on tour, I think he came through here in 2009 or 10. He was like super cool, and like all the guys that traveled with him are just they're at that stage in their career where they're just kind of doing it for the fun and the music of it now. I mean, they could probably be doing anything they wanted, but they're still kind of together as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
And
like the old days.
He's just sitting in his dressing room playing guitar.
Wow.
With the door open. Just you're like, that's Eric Clapton playing guitar. As you're pushing the box down the hallway. And then you compare that to somebody like Kanye, who's like, oh, I've got to have drape. I can't see any walls. There's got to be carpet. There's got to be white couches. And then
white couches.
Oh yeah, like they brought in furniture for him. They all the drape was white. I mean, it was like he was trying to set up his little VIP room back there.
Wow.
And like just to me, I've noticed that a lot of the older school guys, it's like they've kind of been there and done that, and like they realize that, hey, all this stuff is coming out of my pocket one way or another.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just gonna go do my show. And a lot of the guys try to, the younger ones especially, they make it seem like they're the big thing, and there's all this extra, ambiance that they have to have, and it's like
the follies of youth.
Hey, it's like, well, you want to pay us to drape your dressing room? Pay us to drape your dressing room. Doesn't matter to me. When nobody remembers who you are in 2 years, you might have wanted to save all that money, but hey.
All those white couches, man.
Yeah. Why did I buy so many white couches?
Yeah, exactly.
And paid people to drape my dressing room in white. Why couldn't I? I can envision Eric Clapton really only needing a guitar and a stool. Mm-hmm. Like if he had to do a show and all he had was a guitar and a stool, he would walk out with a guitar and a stool and sit there and do a show. Exactly. That would probably be one of the best shows you ever see in your life.
No kidding. Come back, Eric.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was a cool one because I was running a truss spot, and the lighting director he's a cool guy. He's like, all right, guys, this will be a really easy show for you. I don't really call cues during the show, so, whatever. If you want to listen, take your headset off just towards the end of the song, put it back on. So it's like I got paid to watch Eric Clapton. I'm like 20 feet above him. And it's like, hey, this is pretty nice. That was a pretty cool gig.
Well, the next question was going to be, have you had any, that sounds like a pretty great moment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk, what was, do you have a moment you're particularly proud of, or where you finally said, okay, I think I've arrived. I think I can really hack this.
There's not like one specific moment. I kind of, mentioned, one day I was just like kind of doing the end of the year wrap up and taxes and stuff, and it was like, oh, wow.
Well, that's when you saw it as a viable career, right?
There may be something to this, and then, every kind of milestone you hit from there, it's, I've been very lucky and, haven't had to really go out and look for work and beg for work, and sometimes I have to turn it down, and just to get some time to myself and time off.
Yeah, it's good to have that option.
Yeah, and so that's a really good place to be in, and I've really appreciated that.
Not to get too grown up, but here's a good question on the business end. Do you have to cover your own health insurance? Mm-hmm. So yeah, the union doesn't really help with that so much.
Our union here doesn't have those provisions in place. I actually have insurance through the Nashville local union, though. And that's where I go up and do the CMAs, and it's usually like 3-4 weeks of work, and it pays pretty well. And they have the contracts and the mechanisms in place to where they can provide essentially what amounts to a spending account that they deposit for you, and then so that's what pays my health insurance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
something.
Yeah, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I had and they actually recently changed it. I think before it was kind of like a flexible health spending account, so you could just get reimbursed for stuff. But now it's like, no, it pretty much only pays your insurance dues. So it's like I stored all this stuff up with the idea that, like, hey, I could use it to pay bills if I needed to. And like, well, we switched it. Okay, now I'll stop paying for insurance on my own and let you pay for it with the money that I can't use the way I want to anymore now.
Right on. Interesting. And then, of course, as a freelancer, it seems you need to be expected to withhold about 33% of your earnings and squirrel it away for those taxes, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah, that's that is probably one of the other first good lessons I learned was that,
I need to manage my money.
And you gotta, some people set themselves up as like a small corporation or an LLC. And I haven't bothered with any of that. I do all my online stuff as a sole proprietorship. So whatever it takes me to get to the gig, do the gig, whatever equipment I need, that all comes off of my, profit in that world. And then what's left over is what I pay the taxes on, and I usually end up paying, but it's an expense I anticipate, and so I'm usually ready for it.
Yeah, so a lot of your stuff is probably payroll, timesheet, or is it?
I'm kind of half and half because with the film stuff, that's all been union. With the stagehand stuff, that's pretty much all been union, and then when I do the audio, that's usually where I do most of my independent contracting.
Okay, we can't go out talking about all this business crap. That's no way to go out. It's important, but let's go ahead and let's leave it at that, shall we?
Yeah.
So then, words of encouragement. What would you tell somebody coming up in this business?
To the newbies, to the greenhorns.
Specifically, just never stop learning. Even if you're a performing musician, it's like, if you only play 100 songs and you never learn anymore, when the world gets sick of those 100 songs, you're out of a job. So you always have to be learning.
Are you really growing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's not necessarily like if you're a guitar player, you have to learn how to play bass and drums and keyboards too, but, you are going to have to learn new songs. You're going to have to, maybe you should dabble in, learning how to do fingerstyle a little bit. Maybe you should
learn enough to understand it.
Yeah, maybe you should study some classical guitar. You until you kind of, dive into a subject and really start learning about it, you're not really sure what's going to help you. And, you may, like my idea was like, hey, I'm going to go run sound and theater with my music tech degree because that made sense. I mean, I got to the point where it was like, I don't really know if I want to, I didn't want to be an actor necessarily. I hadn't really grown up playing or studying an instrument. So I was like, the performer end might be a little bit out of, my range. But the tech side, well, that seems pretty cool. And, you can still be close to it and still be around it. And then, and then I realized, well, I don't know if I want to just do theater shows. And then when we got into the recording, it's like, well, I don't know if I want to just sit in a studio and record commercials all day long.
Yeah, deal with agencies.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the fun and excitement I want, So I got into the concert world, and the knowledge that I had gained, like we said, lets you ask a little bit better questions, to people, and that's the thing is, if you're approaching or trying to decide whether or not you want to be a music major, if you don't, it's kind of academia is a career path. And, I was like, I don't really want to get a master's and do all that crap.
It's not cheap, is it, Matt?
No, it's not. But then again, I'm sitting here thinking, meanwhile, I was sitting here going, I want my master's.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't learned enough.
Right.
and it's, it's one of those things where, as you go further and further down the path, you do have to make certain decisions, but it's, I think it's great, and I really wish that at the high school level and junior high level there were much better music programs.
Yeah, that's an issue all across the country, and especially here in Alabama. Is it can be tough if if your bliss is in that direction. It can be tough to realize that coming up in high school.
Because I think music programs have fallen away even since the 90s, considerably since the 90s.
Oh, sure.
When we were in high school.
Yeah, in some respects and in some areas, absolutely. Yeah. And there are music programs all over the country getting cut. In places like New Orleans.
What?
Yeah. Can you imagine being in a high school in New Orleans and not having a music program?
No, you just go to the streets.
Yeah, well, that's your music program, right?
There's your education.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, studying music can be a valuable, thing to learn, even if you're not a performer. I mean, and one of the things that kind of edged me away from my maybe performance dreams were, I'd be standing in the practice room, kind of taking a little break, and there's somebody just like killing it in the next room. And you're like, man, I want to meet that person.
I can relate to that feeling.
There's like a little 5-year-old girl walks out. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, screw it, I quit.
Yeah, I could not do that by the time I was 5 years old. Therefore, I've wasted my life.
And it's like by the time she's 16, she doesn't play anymore because she's sick of it.
But it's still hard.
You develop the the neural connections. You develop the hand-eye coordination. You develop that neuroplasticity that will help you approach and achieve things that you don't even know are in front of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember going into take jazz ensemble, and there were 4 bass players taking jazz ensemble, and I was like the third worst out of 4. There was like the best, and then there was the second best, and then there was me, and then there was that one guy that wasn't even showing up half the time.
Right.
So and then I started thinking, I'm not at the top of this field.
That was my jazz ensemble experience. I might have been the 4th guy actually. He just didn't show up. We had
good
Taylor
times.
Prop, some of those.
Oh man,
heavy hitters, man.
He still plays.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's still awesome at it.
Yeah, good times. Yeah. What else? Let's see. Hey, is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you would like to talk about?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
I feel this is
What else you guys want to know? It's I didn't know I could talk about it all that much.
we kind
This
of
is kind of like this kind of becomes like a sort of a pseudo like musician therapy session sometimes.
it
you
kind
know?
of does.
People kind of get to talking and they like realize, hey, I'm pretty cool. My life is all right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't think I ever got that thing off my chest. Let's talk about that.
Right.
Well, we talked a good bit about like just getting along, working with people skills, attitude. I know in the film world, showing up on time is so key.
Oh yeah.
That's like, if you're like 5 minutes late,
Yeah, you're
people are
done.
like, who's this guy? But do you have to, I guess, in your world, and I guess it's a similar kind of
Oh, yeah.
structure, right?
Yeah, because one of the standard things people say is like, well, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. you know?
Right. Yeah, I hate that.
And honestly, that's technically not even like legal, but like it as a
Saying.
professionalism. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be strolling up at 8 o'clock for an 8 o'clock call, and like you haven't had breakfast. Like you know, your gloves aren't on. You're not ready to work at 8. You know, I mean, get there, say hi to everybody, put your stuff down, put your stuff away, get ready to work, and then they say, "All right, let's go." You're ready to get in line and
Right.
start unloading trucks. You know, I mean, and in film too, it's like, you know, if you have a 5 a.m. call, 6 a.m. call, you know, it's like you're not showing up to base camp at 5 a.m. because you've missed the last van.
Oh yeah, right.
to say, and you are not going to be there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like on set, you know, and you know, at your truck, you're at your work truck. You know, your tool belt's on, your radio's in your ear. You know, it's on. You know, you've already found the PA and gotten a fresh battery. You know, if you need to. So yeah, that's key, and that's all professionalism.
That's key in most any job, really.
And
That
like,
level of-
But so often overlooked.
with the orchestra, you know, that Alabama Symphony Orchestra, they have a clause in their thing where it says you have to be in your seat no less than like 5 minutes before the start of the service,
Yeah,
and whether that be a concert, rehearsal, whatever.
yeah, right.
And they're a little different because they're not exactly paid like hourly; they're kind of paid by service.
Sure.
So it's the way they structure that one in their contract, and so yeah, you can kind of specify that, you know, you need to be here before the start time because in that case you're paid by the service or whatever.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean there's always that, you know, that same person that sets his case down at 6 till, walks out on stage, and he's in his seat at exactly 5 till. And then there's other people that show up an hour and a half early.
Right.
And like, you may not even be done setting their chairs up yet, and they're like,
And then they're
Where's my
sitting
chair?
around.
yeah, watching you put their chair down, and then they sit and they open their case and start playing. You know, like,
I'll get your chair right now.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
go ahead and get yours since you're here.
So yeah, I mean, there's, you know, any group of people is going to have a very diverse.
Yeah. In my profession, if you're not showing up to teach a class 10 minutes early, you're already just a bad professor.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because you're going to have to work with getting the PowerPoint set up and getting the
Yeah.
audio turned on and all of that. And you know, if they're sitting there watching you do all that, then you're already just a bad professor. You know,
Yeah, exactly. They're not paying you to, you know,
right.
troubleshoot your presentation.
No, they're not.
paying you to teach them, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, some levels, I mean, that could be a pretty expensive credit hour, you know.
Very. Very.
Well, Chris, you must have gone a very long way in your field because I see you at just about every cool and big major event that comes into town. And
Absolutely.
this has been very educational for me, hopefully for a lot of our
Yeah.
listeners who maybe have an interest in the technical end of music and know that there's so much more to putting on a show than the instruments you strap on.
Oh,
or,
absolutely.
pick up.
It's an overlooked, often, but extraordinarily necessary field.
Yeah, I mean, in a big concert, you know, there may be 5 musicians on stage, but there's, you know, probably 50 people working backstage.
Wow.
So there's, you know, and, you know, it's like, hey, you never have to give up playing music, you know, and if it's something you love and learn, you're always going to do it. And, you know, that's the key is that the more stuff you can do, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
Great place to end it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So with those words of wisdom from our friend Chris Knutson, who we've been listening to, we're going to call it a day. I certainly enjoyed that discussion, and I hope you guys did too.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, man, great
And this
show.
has been great, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Well, that went off without a hitch. And that was our first official episode on careers. We already have some ideas for future episodes, but maybe there are some we haven't considered. Write us at info@musicstudent101.com and let us know what music-related careers you would like to hear about. And as always, if you'd like to support the podcast, visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/musicstudent101.